was always frustrated. I'm eating well, or what I thought was well. I'm exercising. I am like, being active and sleeping well. Why do I have these problems? Like, shouldn't my body be like, okay, you're doing all the right things? And I'm young too. So it really bothered me. And I've tried all the fad diets, not going to lie, before I actually looked into the scientific literature. And I had just kind of given up hope. I remember one time this was during med school, went to the doctor. He did a bunch of tests, couldn't find anything wrong in the blood test. And he's told me that he wanted me to try SSRIs, antidepressants. He's like, I think your fatigue comes from depression. But I'm like, my mood is fine. No one has told me that. And I don't feel like I'm sad. And he was like, yeah, but it could be like underlying and you just don't know. Why don't we experiment? And that didn't feel right to me to experiment with something so strong, especially when like I haven't, like, if it was depression, I feel like I should have started with therapy, not like SSRIs.
And at least be symptomatic of depression.
Right. So that didn't sit well with me. And then around that same time is during my cardiology block, one of the lectures, I was sitting down and the cardiologist started talking about how children these days are getting plaques in their arteries by the age of 10. And that's it. He didn't like talk about why, like, is that bad? Is that good? Just more of a very factual statement. And then soon later, he was like, look at the person to your right and look at the person to your left. You've looked at two people. One of them is going to get heart disease. And then he just moved on. Like, and I was surprised that no one else questioned it either. Like, I was just boggled. I was like, you told us something so big. 50% of my friends are going to get heart disease. Right. And then you're not going to tell me how to prevent it, how to change it. Is that normal? Like you just start telling me all the surgeries and statins and all the medications. And so the combination of those two things, I was like, you know what? Med school is great to learn what to do when people are sick. But I want to learn how diet is involved in my own health, in heart disease and all these things. And that's when I started looking into the scientific literature. And then I was astonished when I discovered everything. I discovered all the studies, all the work of like, Dr. Esselstyn and all these amazing plant-based doctors, as well as about the blue zones. And I was just like, why do I not know this? Like, I'm learning about heart disease, and how come he hasn't even brought this up even for a second? And that's when I was pretty much convinced that, you know what, I'm going to go plant-based.
On the Healthy Human Revolution podcast, Dr. Lori Marbas interviews nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests whose informative and inspiring stories will empower you with the knowledge to transform your life and health.
Hi, welcome to the Healthy Human Revolution podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbas, and today I'm excited and honored to welcome Muzammil Ahmad. And how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you. And I really try hard not to slaughter names, as we were just talking about. So I hope I said that correctly. You've corrected me 2 times. Okay, good. But, this is really fun because you are a third-year medical student in Canada. Yep. And before the show, we were just mentioning briefly, that it's a much needed concept of understanding nutrition, and that you didn't even come into medicine as your first choice of career. So why don't we start there and just kind of give me a brief overview, or wherever you like, as far as how did you start this journey of becoming a doctor?
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of interesting because as a kid, I used to always say, I want to be a doctor. I always had this inner need to want to help people. But I think along the way, I started really focusing on just academics and not how my future job is going to impact other people and my personal desires and passions. So during high school, I was in IB, which is like similar to AP that you guys have. And I was really focused on just my studies, and we could only pick one science. So I actually never did biology or chemistry, which is probably the reason I never took any sciences in my undergrad, because I didn't have that background. So I finished my high school, and then I have always had a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset. So I decided to take business for my undergrad. And I was doing that. I worked every summer. I never felt passionate about it. But there's something that my dad had instilled in my mind, that if you start something, you have to finish it. So if you started a business degree, you got to finish it. And I just kind of stuck to that. I didn't really question it, even though like low key, like internally, I felt like I should probably try to discover something else. So I just stuck to it, and I finished my degree. And after that, I was trying to figure out, do I want to work? And it just happened so that I had done a summer job at a nonprofit Mental Health Commission of Canada. I should mention that I've always been passionate about mental health. So when they offered me a full-time job, I was like, okay, this sounds amazing. But it was a contract job for a year. So I started doing that. And during that time, my dad's like, this job's not going to last forever. It's a contract. Why don't you just apply to, because Alberta is kind of like Texas. It's like oil and gas industry. So my dad was like, why don't you apply to Shell? It's a really good oil and gas company. And they have a really good undergrad program, for interns that are just starting their jobs. I was like, sure, I'll apply for that. I kind of just did it without any plans of actually working there. And they had a very rigorous interview system where they interview you on the phone, then they interview you in person, then they bring you in for 2 days where you stay in a hotel there, and they interview you back to back for like 8 to 5, 2 days with a lot of like group projects and presentations and analyses. And I had just honestly done that out of curiosity. And when they offered me a job, I didn't want to say yes, but I felt like I had gone through this rigorous process. So now I have to say yes. So I kind of just took that job because I had succeeded and I felt like now it was something I have to do. So I started working there and I was really good at what I was doing. I enjoyed the relationships I was making in my company. Everyone was super nice, but I never felt satisfied. Like I always felt the need to have a lot of hobbies to keep myself happy. Luckily, that company gives a lot of vacation. I was getting 7 weeks of vacation. So I would just backpacking a lot because I love backpacking. So I would just go like travel around the world and, but then one trip I had, it was to Bolivia through the Amazon forest. I just met these random people and they were like, you never really talk about your work and, are you even like happy in it? I'm like, yeah, they give me so much vacation. And I think one of them was like, if vacation is what makes you happy, then you don't really love your job. And that really made me like rethink everything. And I'm like, that's true. Like the only reason I like my job is the time off I get. Like, cause I'm all, yeah, like seriously, I was like, there's no other job that gives you that much time off. And I was kind of just using that time off to be happy. And then I realized this is not right. Like I need to love my job. I need to be excited to go to my work, not excited to wait for my vacation. So that's when I kind of decided it was time for a change. At that time, I honestly, because I had never considered what else I could do. So I just applied to law school, just like business degree, like medicine wasn't something I was thinking because I didn't have a science background.
Sure.
So I applied to law school, I got in, but then my gut feeling said, no, you're just going from one thing to the other. You're not passionate about this. Are you really going to be happy? So I actually went backpacking. I quit my job knowing very well that I don't fully know what I want to do yet. I knew I had that law school in my pocket, but I pretty much knew I'm going to say no. I didn't tell anyone that. Everyone thought I'm for sure going to law school, but in my mind, I was like questioning it. So I went traveling, and during my travel is when I started realizing, I'm like, I love meeting people and like helping them. Like I would meet random people in different countries while I was traveling, and I would just love like listening to them and like talking to them and and a lot of them were like, are you a psychologist? Are you a counselor? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I have a finance and marketing background. And then that just triggered something. I was like, you know what? I need to go back into something where I am listening to people and helping them. That's what I enjoy. And again, medicine didn't click in yet, mainly because I didn't have a science background. So I applied for a master's in psychology in the UK, mainly because I always wanted to live in the UK. So I tried for that and I got in and I moved to the UK to do my master's. And I loved it. Psychology was fascinating. And then near the end of it, then the question came like, am I going to do a PhD in psychology? What am I going to do? And I'm like, I love mental health and life psychology. But as I was just like shadowing and talking to psychologists, I also started talking to like other doctors. And I realized that as much as I love mental health, whenever I'm like shadowing, I always feel the need to ask about people's like other health issues. Like, what are they eating? Do they have any other health concerns? Because a lot of these things are interconnected. Mental health is not just like a box on its own. It's all interconnected. And as much as I love psychology, I just felt like I would be just stuck talking about that one thing, because no one comes to a psychologist to talk about their diet or to talk about their diabetes. And I just felt like, I can use this master's in psychology if I pursue medicine. And that's where like I remembered that I always wanted to be a doctor. Now it's time for me to reconsider. So I actually had to go back to undergrad, take science courses, like like one of these
Prerequisites.
prerequisites. And then I applied, and fortunately, luckily, I got into my top choice of school. And yeah, so that's how I ended up in medicine, and I couldn't be happier.
Well, obviously you're super bright because you're getting into medical school and law school and the tough like
Thank you.
it's a beautiful thing when you have choices like that, and we're happy to have you on this side of the of the fight to get people healthier. I mean, it is actually, I think it benefits you to be an older student in medical school. I was 6 years after undergrad, I got married and had 3 children, and then went back to medical school. So they were
cool.
5, 3, and 10 months old. And I always wanted to be a doctor since I was 10. I was a major in biology, but that was a really good, medical school was tough. I did a master's as well, an MBA while I was in medical school. So there was like, we're just starting this program. It's for free. I'm like, okay, sure. Why not? 3 kids, 2 degrees. Why not? And there's so much to that story, but yes, I think it makes you appreciate your education and
Absolutely.
what you're doing. And
Absolutely.
yeah, those are some fun times. So I think it's good for you to have that experience. So
Thank you.
Even though you got to travel, you got to do some cool stuff.
It helps me connect with patients on so many different levels. Because I don't care what background they come from, educationally or whatever, like ethnic background, because I've been to so many countries and I've like worked in a few different jobs. So it really helps me connect with patients on different levels, and I really enjoy that.
Absolutely, 100%. So that's really fun. So now you walk into medical school, you're starting your 3rd year, and then somewhere you find the green side of things. So tell us a little bit about your plant-based journey.
Absolutely. So I've always been interested in nutrition. Okay, I shouldn't say always. I used to be overweight. I'm trying to remember when. Like I was overweight a lot of my high school, on and off, and then during my undergrad too. And then that's when I kind of realized that I needed to, start eating healthier. Before that, I never used to think about food as like something I need to think about. So I got into nutrition a long time ago, but I wasn't looking into the scientific literature then. I wasn't for the longest time, to be completely honest. I was doing something that's often referred to as like the bro diet, which is like a lot of protein, tiny bit of broccoli, and then like rice or something. And that's what I was eating because that's what everyone around me was eating. And compared to where I had come from, which was a lot of junk food and a lot of pop and things like that, to me, that was like very healthy. It's all relative, right? Like, where do you come from? What were you doing before? So for the longest time, I kept thinking I'm eating healthy. But I've had like a few health problems that made me always question, is my diet right? I have had migraines all my life. And I was always told by my doctors that it's genetic, especially because my mom also has it. So I never thought more than that. I would just sometimes take really strong pills that were given to me. I had cystic acne on my face and have tried like so many medications, Accutane 5 times and
5 times.
5 times, 5 cycles. One is already like enough. So you can imagine.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. They don't mind prescribing it all over again if you get acne. So.
That is a dry skin and the lips and the liver painful. Potential toxicity. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. 5 times. I never knew they would actually do that for you. But
yeah, it was pretty bad. Because it would get better and then I would be off Accutane and then it would come back. Because I wasn't really changing what I'm eating. So it doesn't surprise me that's what was happening.
Sure.
So I had acne, I had migraines, I had something called like constant fatigue syndrome. Like I was always tired, needed a lot of caffeine throughout the day. And regardless of like my sleep, I always tried to sleep, but still needed a lot of coffee and stuff. And then I also had a bit of eczema and digestive issues. So I was always frustrated. I'm eating well, or what I thought was well. I'm exercising. I am being active and sleeping well. Why do I have these problems? Like, shouldn't my body be like, okay, you're doing all the right things? And I'm young too, so it really bothered me. And I've tried all the fad diets, not going to lie, before I actually looked into the scientific literature. And I had just kind of given up hope. I remember one time this was during med school, went to the doctor, he did a bunch of tests, couldn't find anything wrong in the blood test. And he's told me that he wanted me to try SSRIs, antidepressants. He's like, I think your fatigue comes from depression. But I'm like, my mood is fine. No one has told me that. And I don't feel like I'm sad. And he was like, yeah, but it could be like underlying and you just don't know. Why don't we experiment? And that didn't feel right to me, to experiment with something so strong, especially when like I haven't, like, if it was depression, I feel like I should have started with therapy, not like SSRIs.
And at least be symptomatic of depression.
Right. So that didn't sit well with me. And then around that same time is during my cardiology block, one of the lectures, I was sitting down and the cardiologist started talking about how children these days are getting plaques in their arteries by the age of 10. And that's it. He didn't like talk about why, like, is that bad? Is that good? Just more of a very factual statement. And then soon later, he was like, look at the person to your right and look at the person to your left. You've looked at two people. One of them is going to get heart disease. And then he just moved on. Like, and I was surprised that no one else questioned it either. Like, I was just boggled. I was like, you told us something so big. 50% of my friends are going to get heart disease. Right. And then you're not going to tell me how to prevent it, how to change it. Is that normal? Like you just start telling me all the surgeries and statins and all the medications. And so the combination of those two things, I was like, you know what? Med school is great to learn what to do when people are sick. But I want to learn how diet is involved in my own health, in heart disease and all these things. And that's when I started looking into the scientific literature. And then I was astonished when I discovered everything. I discovered all the studies, all the work of like, Dr. Esselstyn and all these amazing plant-based doctors, as well as about the blue zones. And I was just like, why do I not know this? Like, I'm learning about heart disease, and how come he hasn't even brought this up even for a second? And that's when I was pretty much convinced that, you know what, I'm going to go plant-based. And that's how I became plant-based.
It's like you peek into the lid and you're like, whoa. Yeah. It's just like,
literally, that's exactly how I felt.
It's like dynamite has exploded, and you can't unlearn that, because then you're like, what on earth?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, be thankful that you're young and that you discover this then, right? So I've been doing a plant-based diet myself with the family for 9 years, or almost 9 years. And I was 41, so I'll be 50 this year. And I don't feel 50. I feel like
you don't look 50. You look so young.
Thank you. My TikTok is ticking here. It's like it's less than 2 months away now, or about 2 months. And but that is really a blessing for you, that you're starting your career with this amazing knowledge. Do you know what specialty you want to go into?
Most likely, I've decided I don't want to do anything fancy. I want to do general practice and focus on lifestyle medicine, because so I can help these patients prevent all these things I'm frustrated to see other people aren't preventing.
Or reversing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It really is, when you're in medical school and they teach you, you can't use the word reverse, because very few things are reversible. I'm like, but now I'm thinking, actually 80% of these things are certainly preventable, and majority of those are also reversible.
They don't even want you questioning it, which is so sad.
No, exactly. And the beautiful thing is, as a physician, you can learn to take in the medicine parts, and you're going to marry that with the very powerful lifestyle medicine and the interventions. So your patients will love you and appreciate you. And, you'll hear doctors say, oh, nobody wants to change. I was like, really? Did you ever
That
ask?
Is not true. I have noticed.
100% not true.
Not true. I agree with you, because I shadow all the time at family medicine clinics, and the doctors always tell me that. And I'm like, can you give me 5 minutes with the patient? I talk to them and they promise me they're going to make changes. And they do start making changes. It just, they didn't know. Yeah. And that's the issue. You need to tell them.
Exactly. So that's why. So the other interesting thing is, so now you have these people like yourself, myself, other plant-based doctors who have this knowledge, but there's not a whole lot of us. I mean, we're growing in
Yeah.
numbers. So that's why we started the plant-based telehealth. So now that's why we're in 40, 50 states. We see international patients. I've seen Canadians. And so that is, I mean, the telehealth component with the COVID at this point has been, it's really an interesting, kind of a very synchronicity of events occurring. So
Hmm.
just keep fighting the good fight. That's
Thank you.
amazing. So tell us, so you had all these issues, you listed quite the
Yeah.
list. And so how did you start seeing things change? Like, so you introduced this plant-based diet. Was it, some people have a little difficulty? Tell us how you did it. Like what
Okay.
was your journey to health?
So okay. I should mention that before I discovered plant-based, I was still eating a lot of vegetables. I wasn't one of those people who was just not eating vegetables. Suddenly I was like, I need to incorporate them. I was eating a lot of animal products, but I was still having my daily huge salad. I also grew up on a lot of vegetables and lentils. Like my mom always made them. It's actually interesting because my background is Pakistani. And when I was a child, we were in Pakistan and we immigrated when I was like around 11, 12. The first 10, 11 years of my life, I barely ate animal products. Like my mom would make him like maybe a few times a week. And then when we moved to Canada, it became a daily component. And we all of us gained weight, but we never thought about it. So it's not that I didn't have the palate for it. It just the frequency had dropped, and I was just able to increase it because like it was still like in the back of my mind that we used to do that. But so what I did was I had a lot of animal products in my fridge because my fridge and freezer were always stocked up. So what I did was I just started making more and more plant-based dishes and less on those. And then I just wanted to get rid of them. But then there came a point where I was just like, I can't eat this anymore. Like, but I didn't want to waste it. So I found this like food like donation place that takes like frozen food. And I literally took all my frozen animal products, like, meat and fish and everything, and just gave them all. And I just felt good. I'm like, okay, now I can do what I want to do like 100%.
Oh boy. So yeah, so part of my story of going plant-based diet is it was a patient interaction. It's kind of a fun story, but when I went home, so my kids were 13, 15, and 18 then, and my poor husband, and I was like, we're going on a plant-based diet, and the kids knew better than to question me. But anyway, I threw everything out except, and my husband's like, well, you're still cooking, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, whatever. Okay. He's Filipino, so you get, they'll eat anything. I decided. And so what was interesting was we had a freezer full of a quarter of a grass-fed beef. So this is a very large amount of meat. And I was like, I felt honestly like I couldn't give it to anyone because I was going to kill them. So I started thinking, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to donate to an animal shelter. But 2 days later, after we went I literally overnight went to plant-based diet, the freezer broke and we came home from church and there literally was like the smell and the stench.
So it just went bad on its own.
It did on its own. And my husband's like, did you unplug that? I was like, that is divine intervention.
It was just meant to be.
But exactly. But what was, when you started moving into this plant-based diet, this gradual, like what were the first things that you saw get better? And then like, what was your like, wow, I am better. Wow. What happened?
I feel like, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like things started changing pretty quickly because dairy was probably the first thing to go. That's also because dairy was something I had cut out of my life a long time ago and then reintroduced it. And then, so dairy wasn't hard for me to kick out again. So as soon as I took dairy out, my cystic acne went away. Like I still get those tiny pimples once in a while, but I used to get these huge cystic acne that just start like, whatever I had on my face, as soon as that went away, none of the new ones came. So that was like pretty like amazing. I took out one category of food and I was not eating junk food. So it's not like I took out junk food. I was never eating that to begin with. My diet was very clean and that went away. And then as I took out everything, it's hard for me to say when it happened, but honestly, like my fatigue just like gradually became better to a point that I was like, I would wake up and I'd be like, I don't even like, do I need this coffee right now? And I would just like not drink it, where before it was like such a habit. So I just stopped. Like I still love coffee, so I'll drink it once in a while, but it's not something I require anymore. It's more of like if I'm craving the taste, or or if I just had a bad night because I got home late or whatever. But and then my digestion got better, my eczema went away, and I just feel like things just got better and better and better.
Absolutely. So now you have this amazing knowledge, and obviously everyone who has a life-changing transformation or reads the stuff, they feel evangelical about it almost. So what did you start doing in your school? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
For sure. I feel like that can be so hard, learning all that. And then, because I remember I hadn't seen this friend for like a week. And during that week, I had gone into this like deep research. And I came back out of it, and her and I went for a walk, and I'm like telling her all this. And she's like, did you just have an epiphany? Like, what happened to you? And then and it was the same with school, because then I was going to my lectures, and again, like everything they're teaching is important, but there is a huge piece that's missing that needs to be incorporated. Like we learn about all these obscure diseases that I doubt I'll ever see, but we don't learn about this that could save so many lives. So I was just starting to get frustrated. So I know during summer is when I decided I wanted to do more. And I approached one of the deans, and it's kind of funny because I didn't mean to end up in the board meeting room, but I was talking to her secretary how I want to book an appointment with her. And I was like, I really need this. And then the dean was walking by, and she was like, why don't you just talk to her right now? I'm like, no, she's going into the meeting. And then the dean overheard, and the dean is like, whatever you have to share, you can share with everyone. And there was like literally like more than 30 big, like, seniors sitting there, like all these doctors and admin folks. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, okay, I was pretty honest. I'm like, I feel like everything we're being taught is super important, but there's a lot of nutrition knowledge that's like outdated. A lot is still lacking, and a lot could be incorporated. And I just kind of gave a lot of examples, and the associate dean was like, the same person I've been talking about. She was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. It's time to make some changes. And she was like, leave that with me. Let us think it over, and then connect with me in a few weeks, and then we can see what we can do. So then I connected with her during the summer, and then she was like, either this summer or next summer, you could actually take a deep dive into the curriculum and see what needs to be changed, what needs to be updated, what needs to be added. But let me know if you want to do something right away. So I was like, I want to start a nutrition club. I feel like what you're recommending is something I also want to do, but there's so much red tape that's going to take so long for that to be implemented. I want to start doing something right away. So then I got the approval and funding for the nutrition club, and I started running that, and then brought in a dietitian, and like showed documentary, and then more people joined me in the club to run it. And then we started sending out a monthly newsletter written by one of my friends. And then the same friend, Cass Warbeck, her and I wanted to do the podcast for the longest time. And then I told her, I'm like, I want to do this. Would you like to be my co-host? And then she was totally down. So then we went back to the school, and we were like, we want to do this. We need funding. We need your approval. And we basically gave the entire plan, and we got the funding, we got the approval. And it was kind of amazing because I was not expecting them to do that. I should probably mention that before me getting approval for that, I was constantly sending emails to professors with CCing the dean about anything about nutrition that was outdated. Like I remember one of the psychiatrists was like, vegans don't get these nutrients, which can lead to depression. And one doctor was like, vegans don't live as long as omnivores. Which is like completely opposite of like what's been shown. So then I would just find all these studies, and I would send the emails to the professor and CC the dean. And I think she had been reading them. She wasn't responding to them, but it seemed like she was reading the articles and what I was sending.
Right.
So when I went to her for this, she was like already in her mind. She was like, he knows what he's talking about. So she was like, you have my blessing, you have my approval, do what you want to do. So yeah. And we started
so
podcast, yeah.
You have, there's so much where to even start. So you have professors arguing with you, or not essentially, or essentially
Debating
stating
or,
incorrect facts, but they weren't even looking. They're probably just like, oh, I heard on whatever, or read an article on a
a lot of
blog.
them did not have sources to say
No.
that. And one of them had a source, but then like the article that they had mentioned had a few flaws that I pointed out. So I just feel like it's unfortunate. It's not their fault. They like a lot that is, I feel like, is a huge problem, is sometimes they just don't know what articles to read or how to read them and how to find flaws and like be critical. Because I didn't mention in my story, but I've also gotten my nutrition certification. So I'm now able to like more so read nutrition articles and be more critical about it. So yeah. So a lot of professors have like opened their minds to it.
That's, well, good. I mean, it's just unfortunate that it has to be a student pointing these out to people who are teaching our future physicians.
Yeah, it is. It's very unfortunate.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Like I think I had mentioned in an email, my daughter's a fourth-year medical student, and she's going into family medicine. She just took, so in the United States, we have to take, it's a 3-part national medical licensing exam, and she just finished her second part, did very well. And it's just, you know, I think of her, and she's plant-based, obviously, and I think of her and her future, and you and your future, and I think what a blessing for all of those patients that are going to be able to interact with you. But then I think about all those other 95% of your class that's not getting the teaching that's so important. And so have you started seeing like they're actually teaching this in your classes? Like, are you seeing that shift yet?
So, okay, a few things to that. They haven't started changing because this summer, the project I had mentioned that the dean was like, why don't you go into the curriculum? I had a few other plans. So then my friend Cass Orbeck was like, I can take this project. So she took it over. So she has gone through the curriculum. She's pointed out a lot of the things that need updating or then is just simply incorrect. And then the things that should be added. And she's plant-based. She's been plant-based for like 6-7 years. So she has made all the recommendations, all the sources are there. And it was a paid job. So like they were paying her to do this job over summer. Yeah, it was the same dean. So she
I
was
like your dean.
well, the dean resigned, so we got a new dean starting like this month. But at least that project got completed. Now the only thing is, does it get implemented? They paid for it, so we're really hoping to take everything she has put together into a package and actually try to implement. That's the next step, and that has to come because now the struggle is to get each individual professors of each lecture to actually make those changes.
Wow.
So that's going to be, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. That's going to be other work. But the good thing is because of the the good thing is because of the podcast, a lot of the students from my class have started going plant-based. These people I never thought would have messaged me saying, thank you so much for bringing us this information. I decided to go plant-based a few days ago. This friend was like, I became vegetarian recently and been eating mostly plant-based. And it's just so many medical students from my class have been switching over. So that's really good to hear.
That is phenomenal. And, you know, I think kudos to you for taking the initiative to share that with your classmates and your professor and really trying to implement long-term change for every student that comes in after you. Because, I mean, I know physicians who eat a plant-based diet, but they don't bother to share it with their patients because they don't feel like that behavior change is possible. And I've dove into psychology is so fascinating, isn't it?
It is so fascinating.
Like half of my books are on behavior change. I just finished, I read Tiny Habits. I just did BJ Fogg's, like he had a boot camp. So I did that for 4 weeks, got to work with him personally. A friend of mine, Dr. Judd Brewer, is a addiction psychiatrist, and he wrote The Craving Mind. That's really cool stuff. I mean, there's so many amazing things that you can do when you talk to your patient and draw out a habit loop and explain to them, this is how a habit forms, this is how you can break a habit, this is how you implement good behavior. They're just like, I'm not a victim of my cravings.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if not every patient you talk to changes, even if you're able to change more than 50%, let's say, whatever the minimum, even if you're able to change 2 people, you're still like helping those people. So I still think we should have that conversation with every patient.
Oh, absolutely. And the research supports that even a very small, initiative by a physician to implement good health lifestyle changes, they will take upon it. They will actually act upon it. And then you have the social contagion factor. And so you touch so many lives. You have authority behind you. People respect that. And then you touch so many lives, and those lives touch lives. So the ripple effect is actually pretty cool. It'll be fun for you to look back in 10 years and say, where are those people that you touched first, and then how they touched it, and if they share those stories.
Absolutely.
Those are really fun because you're empowering others to make change in other lives. And you're just like, that's just I call it veggie crack. It's like, so it's like you get better because I tell you to eat some vegetables, and I get a high.
Yeah.
I call it veggie crack. Hashtag veggie crack. We're set. So,
I love it. I love it.
But that is awesome. So what are now, here you are, you're going in, I am assuming in Canada, your first 2 years are kind of like
It's
the United
same to
States.
US.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're going into your clinical years.
Yeah.
So have you contrived any ways of working that into sharing with patients that you might be encountering?
Well, I plan on bringing it up with my patients. Like, obviously, I talk to my, attending as well. But I do, because I was already doing it kind of during just shadowing. So I definitely plan on wherever I can bringing it up, even if it's simple as if you have 2 hours to spare, can you go watch Forks Over Knives? I feel like if a patient's so sick that they need a surgery and you tell them, they might actually listen to you and just go watch that, and that might change their life. So I definitely plan on bringing it up wherever I can.
That's awesome. That's phenomenal. And I know you've interviewed Michelle McMacken and a few others, but like Rob Osfeld at Montefiore in New York, they actually got it running on a loop. Works over knives.
I love that. That's so cool.
In the hospital. And so I also helped start, there was 3 of us on the phone 3 years ago to start the first plant-based medical journal. So it's called the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and I'm the managing editor. We got Kim Williams to be our editor-in-chief, who is the past president of the American College of Cardiology. He's the chief of cardiology at Rush. And that's been really interesting to get on this side of things with publications and open access and stuff. But it's very cool. But Rob actually wrote an article on how to do that in your hospital, and I will send that to you. And
Please,
I think you'll find it's free. The journal is free for everyone to actually register, and you can have access. It's open access. We don't charge anyone to even, it's a $10 billion industry. Let me tell you, that was a learning experience, because nobody I ever knew had ever launched or designed a medical journal. So I literally was building this from scratch, and it was quite an endeavor. But now we've got our systems in place, and we're in our full second year. Will be next month. Wow.
Wow.
But yeah, so we'll I'll send that to you. But it's been really interesting that's a $10 billion industry. So here you have, at least in the United States, we have our tax dollars supporting all this research. And there's for-profit commercial publishers that like, let's say, association, the American Medical Association has JAMA, and you have all these different ones. They actually pay these commercial publishers to publish their journal, that they give them all the information for free. The research is done, paid for our tax dollars. The researchers do it, to get, tenure or whatever they're doing, wherever they're working. And then they have to oftentimes pay a fee, $2,500 to $4,500, just to actually submit it to be told, oh, we only accept 6% or so of these publications. And it is a really, what a gimmick, right? So here, I'm like, I should just start a commercial publication and publishing house. And then I could say, you have to pay me to publish it. You have to pay me to submit, and you do all that work for free.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I sit here and go, you must be kidding. And then it's behind a paid wall, so I don't even have access as a taxpayer. Anyway, that is a pet peeve of mine. When I was doing the research, there's a lot of chatter in the back, when you start digging into how to do this, and it's just like, whoa. So anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but there's some really cool stuff there. So I would encourage you, and if you ever want to submit something like what you're doing at your medical school, kind of in the same genre of what Rob did, that'd be really cool. We'd
No,
love
I'll
that.
definitely look into that. Yeah, no, that
Yeah,
sounds really good. Thanks for telling
absolutely.
me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's phenomenal. So I know we have a few minutes left. So can you tell me what's been kind of the fun part about this, as far as like, what are things that you've learned that you wish you could have like your future patients know, or maybe your friends, what their experience is like learning how to talk? Like, what are some of those like finer points that you've like, wow, like a few other aha moments by doing this journey?
Are we talking about the plant-based journey? Just to
Your plant-based journey, medicine, whatever you feel is like, it's just been, yeah. And I think because it's when you start seeing your friends change and they're improving their lives, like what are some things that you've learned along the way that as early on, because you're early into your journey
Mhm.
as a practicing physician, to share that message? And because I know I certainly have refined how I share this message. What are you learning as far as that process of sharing this information, or maybe why you're surprised at how people took something?
For
That's always
sure.
encouraging.
Yeah, no, I think, okay, let's talk about when we are sharing information with our patients.
Mm.
I think what's really important to first tell them that there is another option.
Mm.
That is so key, because a lot of them have been made to believe that there isn't another option. If they have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or high cholesterol, hypertension, they are made to believe that there's no other option. Medication is the only option and they need to take it regularly.
Mm.
And I'm not saying like medications can't help, but I'm saying that we need to, just bring it up with the patient and be like, hey, okay, I've already presented one option. There's this second option, and then go over with them and tell them the benefits and tell them how there's potential to reverse their type 2 diabetes, or to bring their insulin resistance down, or to bring their cholesterol levels down, and their mental health improves when you change your diet. Like that's another
Mm-hmm.
huge one, because I'm really passionate about that. And bringing up that information is like step one.
Mm.
And because you cannot just tell them go change your diet, and then that's what a lot of doctors do. One, the patient doesn't know what that means. It's too vague, and it's very like authoritative,
Mm.
and I don't ever see that working. So
Mm.
we need to present the information. Then the second thing should be giving them maybe like tips. Hey, okay, you're not ready to go all the way to plant-based, 100% plant-based. How about you change one of your diet, one of your meals every day, and then give them options. Like when I start my own clinic one day, I plan on having like some sort of website with like pamphlets that I can give them, and then they can quickly read on the pamphlet and then go home and look more on the website, because the pamphlet will like increase curiosity, and have like easy to do tips, like okay, you eat chicken every day, how about in your pasta this time put, I don't know, chickpeas or whatever, and like simple tips. And that can really change, because that's what I've noticed with my friends too, is they sometimes just don't know how to do it, and that scares them
Mm-hmm.
from even like looking into it, because everyone's like has their habits now. However old they are, they've been doing it for that many years, so you need to like give them very actionable things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's key, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what brings change. Is one, the number one has to be understanding. Obviously, if you give them actionable things and they don't understand why they need to do it, most
Mm-hmm.
likely they will forget and not do it. So make them understand, and then give them actionable things, and then give them time to like try it out, and then at the next visit have a discussion. How did that go? What were the things that didn't work? And I use that with my friends a lot, and it works. So and so that's what I recommend to a lot of my friends who are like, oh, we can't talk about diet, like patient's not going to do it. And I'm like, but I made you change your diet. Like, are you like, why do you think a patient wouldn't do the same thing? So then they like, start thinking, oh, that's true.
Mm.
So that's like number one, huge thing. And a
Oh.
lot of people come to me and they'll start blaming, because then they'll try to do it overnight, which can work for certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, they need to go slowly. If you haven't been eating a lot of your fiber, you can't just go from like 10 grams of fiber to 60 grams of fiber. That's like recipe for like disaster for your,
Well, for you and maybe others around you, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So like go slow. Like if fiber is something you haven't been consuming, slowly increase. Say don't do it overnight. That's a huge one, because I know my friend, he wanted to try the smoothie recipe I drink. I didn't want to send it to him, but then he wanted it, so I did, and then he complained about diarrhea afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, because my smoothie has so much fiber in it. Like, you don't drink smoothies for one, so so yeah, taking the steps is
Yeah.
another one. And completely off of the, like, not talking about diet now. One thing I really want to talk about is like finding your passion, because that's something that I wish I had done sooner, but I'm really happy that I did do whenever, I decided to do it. Because then you're like, my education, what I'm doing when I talk to a patient, learning about this doesn't feel like a chore anymore. It's like, I want to do it because I have a passion, I have a goal in mind, and I want to keep learning. And that's really key, is if you're not happy with whatever you're doing, like, you need to figure out why and what will make you happy. So
Yes, I was. I can't remember which podcast it was. Maybe it was the Knowledge Project podcast, because I run, and so I listen to different podcasts, and they were talking just about that. So it's like some people, or maybe it was. It might have been Oprah. So I don't remember. It's one of these. I found it was interesting, but it was like describing passion, right? And they put it in the terms of almost like stages of life. So you have interest, that might be your infancy, toddler. And then you might have, so you kind of move into from interest towards kind of a passion, like you find something that sort of interests you, and then you're kind of passionate about, but then you find your purpose. And actually, it was Jim Quick. It was Quick. Jim Quick interviewed someone that was recent. I was laughing at the moment, but that was really cool, because people are like, well, I've lost my purpose. I don't know what my purpose is, or I've lost my passion. He goes, just go back, right? So then go backwards to, if you've lost your passion, go back to what are your interests. So maybe if someone, you're saying search for your passion, maybe they're like, I don't know my passion, maybe just go look at your interests and see where that evolves. So I really liked how that evolution was putting it in different steps. And he obviously said it much more eloquently than I could at the moment. So, but I think you're right. Your passion will pull you through really tough days with no sleep and not getting paid much.
Agree. Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. That's a huge thing, because before I was making six figures at such a young age, had 7 weeks of vacation, and none of that brought me happiness. Now I'm a medical student, barely have time to sleep, and I'm happier.
Oh, I so understand. Oh my goodness. Yes, that's awesome. So I really appreciate the passion aspect of it. So do you guys ever get to work with like high school students, or maybe even first year students, now that you're moving into your third year? Do you guys have like a mentorship program at all? Because I know that my daughter had that, and they really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, we do definitely. Well, I haven't worked with high school students, but what we have is every second year medical student has a first year medical student, and also every third year medical student has a first year medical student. So the first year medical students have two mentors, one year above them and one in clerkship. And and the person that I mentored, him and I have become amazing friends now. And that's few things that I mentioned to you about like passion and stuff. I always talk to him about it. And then also he has been inspired to be more plant-based as he checks out. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really important to share that with people, because sometimes people just don't think about it until someone like brings it up. And
it's funny. I will say that people, there's no doubt now what I do and what I would recommend, but it's funny, people reach out to you. It's almost like they're like, well, I have this question, Dr. Marbas or Lori, or whatever, a friend or whatever, but I know you're going to tell me to go plant-based, but I really want to make sure there's nothing else to do. I'm like, really? It's like, I almost think they want to be told they need to do a plant-based diet, but now they'll have permission because we told them, a doctor has told them. It's been really interesting, those little quirky conversations, like, but I'm like, but you know what I'm going to tell you, so why are you even...
Exactly.
Have you seen any of that kind of like reverse psychology that I have to play with someone to like tell them to do what they already want to do?
Absolutely. I feel like sometimes they just need a push. It happens to a lot of my non-medical related friends, because I feel like it's the same thing. They haven't looked it up on their own, but just based on documentaries they've seen and what they've heard, They feel like that's the thing to do. And then they're like, okay, if this person who's a medical student and trained in nutrition, if he says it, then I'm going to do it. And I'm like, but you already knew you should do it. But
and that's been actually happening more. It's been like something that's been definitely occurring more in the last 3 to 4 months. We launched our telehealth practice, my business partner and I, in March. And some of the, you know, most of the patients, the beautiful thing about this is it's called plant-based telehealth. And you're just like, people know we're going to be preaching a plant-based diet. Most of them have already done it, but I've had a few that come on to argue with me, but they keep coming back. And I'm like, I know you're paying me to help you, but
I feel like it probably deep down, they want to get there.
They do.
They just have a lot of barriers and they keep coming back for you to break them.
And I love them. Actually, we have some of the best conversations because we talk about all sorts of stuff, but I just feel so bad because I'm searching for that one piece that's just, you know, like I've had patients tell me, you know, Dr. Marbas, you keep telling me this has been a year, but finally I decided because this one thing you said about some esoteric fact, I was like, that one thing really did it for you?
Yeah, because to you, that one thing probably didn't mean much.
So I'm searching now. There's a few of those patients and I'm just searching for that clue. I'm constantly listening. I'm going to say something that's going to just do it for you. And, but it's just me being ready and just being patient and creating that positive opportunities for them. But they do come back and that's what is so fascinating. It's not like me just as a regular doctor, but they're going to get this plant-based message and I think they want it. It's just
they
a matter.
Want it.
Yeah.
They just have barriers.
Yeah. So this is another genre of patient that I've really been interested in recently, but anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. see where you are in your, maybe I'll talk to you again in maybe 2 or 3 years and say, okay, tell me about.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Because people are so knowledgeable now too. They have so much information. Okay, with 5 minutes, because I know you're busy. Tell me one other thing as far as when you become, well, let's just say, or maybe a better way to do this. If you had magical powers, right, and you could just wave a magic wand, what would be the one thing that you would do? Maybe in medicine or in just culture in general, but like what would be the one thing that you feel would just be the most powerful step? Or maybe magic wand making things happen?
I think this is not a superpower I've ever seen, but if this could be a superpower, it'd be really cool where you just wave a wand and everyone's barriers come down and they're willing to actually listen and understand. Because what I notice is a lot of the times people have so many barriers that they don't actually want to listen. They want to argue where they want you to listen to their points and that's it. And they did not come in to understand. And I feel like that could not just like make more people go plant-based, but in general, I feel like as a society, we could be much better and understanding and compassionate towards other people's problems and lifestyles and their hardships and struggles if we just took those barriers down and were like, okay, I'm going to try to understand this person or this scenario and leave my own bias out for a minute. And I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, it's like those people you have those conversations with, and when they're speaking, you're like, you didn't even listen to me. You were just already pre-formulating what you were going to say.
Exactly.
I totally get that. That would be that's a really cool superpower, though. We'll have to work on that one. But imagine being present. I mean, it almost is a superpower if you have the superpower of presence in when you're conversing with someone and really make them feel listened to and connected at that moment and saying, you right now are the most important thing to me. And so I think that is touching upon your superpower, Rich, but I like that. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a really cool answer. I really like that.
I've never been asked this question before. And it's funny because I've heard other people ask this question on podcasts to other people. And I always thought of like these weird things. Yeah. But now that you asked me, my answer was so different than what I thought I would have said.
But I think what you said is very insightful and needed, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, especially in today's world of everything going on. Yeah, absolutely. Well, my friend, thank you so much for the time, and what a delightful conversation. And I wish you so well in all your studies. And if you ever need anything, let me know. But I'm super proud to know you, and I think you're going to do amazing things.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, for your podcast, and for everything you're doing. And I'm excited that we have gotten in touch, and I'll stay in touch with
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. This is awesome. So
Yeah.
thanks everyone for listening.